Hello guys, we're going to start Unit 3. The name for this unit is National Income and Price Determination, which I think is a pretty bogus name. Basically, it is how our supply and demand market that we learned in Unit 1, where there were shifters in supply and those and shifters in demand, and the little acronym was TRIBE thing. Now we're looking at a more national scale. So it's basically supply and demand nationally and what the government does to try and fix economic issues. That's the price determination part. So 3.1 is what we're going to do today, and y'all are going to love it because it's so simple. It's so easy to understand. And then I'll just have a few questions for you to answer in the Google form. So here we go. So today we're going to learn a term. 2.1 is called aggregate demand, and it is the new demand curve. What we learned in Unit 1 was more microeconomic stuff. It's really small. We're looking at the market of a good. So it would be like the market of this graph is gasoline. What happens if blah, 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 blah. It's just a market for one good. Whereas in this unit, and we're going to use this graph in Unit 3 and Unit 4, and Unit 5 and Unit 6, this graph just continues forever, it's more national. It means everything added together. So the word aggregate means we are taking everyone's demand for everything. My demand for a new car, your demand for shoes, the government's demand for a new railroad, and we're literally adding it all together. And what's really awesome about this is the formula for aggregate demand is the same as the formula for GDP. Because think, if we are adding together everybody's demand, well, what are people demanding? People are demanding the goods that are made in America. So it's the same as real GDP. So all goods and services that buyers are willing and able to purchase at different price levels, the demand for everything. So if you remember your nominal GDP equation, C plus I plus G plus exports minus imports. We take out those imports because we're not demanding American goods there. We're demanding foreign goods. So they will actually kind of hurt our demand. So what does this graph look like? From in this graph and all throughout this unit, it's this one graph, essentially. The x-axis used to be, that's the y-axis. Come on, Miss Keller. The y-axis used to be called price. Now, since it's the demand for absolutely everything, we call this axis price level. So overall, overarching prices. So if we move up this axis, it means increased inflation. If we move down that axis, it means prices are actually going down. This axis used to be the quantity axis, and I would say mind your P's and Q's. It's a little bit different this time. This axis is now going to be the quantity of all items in America, which is our real GDP. It is the gross domestic product, all the crap made in America. So it's the same as saying price and quantity, except it's now price and quantity for the whole country. And the curve we're going to look at today, remember curve, because if we were to actually graph it, it would probably have some sort of slight curve to it, is called aggregate demand, and we will label it with an AD, aggregate demand. Not just demand, aggregate demand, and they'll get you for that on the AP test. So make sure to keep those graphs separate in your mind. This is all demand for all goods and services. So all prices would be price level, and all quantities would be the real GDP. Just like regular demand, though, if price goes up, people ain't going to buy as much, which is why it's up over here. And if price goes down, then people will buy more, which is why that's over there. So it has a similar feel to it as regular demand. So every once in a while, you'll get these one-off questions on my unit tests, on practice questions. I even think I have one here in a minute on the AP exam where they ask you why is something downward sloping, or why does when price level increases aggregate demand quantity demanded decreases, or when price level decreases why is more aggregate demand demanded. These are the reasons why. So I'm not going to explain these to you. They are super simple to understand. You're going to pause the video and you're going to read them and know that a multiple choice question over them might be coming here in a minute. Right here, this says XN. I meant to put X minus M. Sometimes on the AP exam, X, like exports, net exports will be called XN. Just keep that in mind. All right, here we go. You read it, you understand it, moving forward. So on your notes, you have graphed this because you're a great student and you're doing your notes at home. Here is what an increase would look like. So for some reason, some part of CIGX went up. Maybe consumer spending went up. Well, if consumer spending alone goes up, the whole thing's going to go up because this is a number. It's a huge, massive number. It's all the things demanded in America. So like, it's a really big number. But if one portion of this goes up, then the whole thing goes up. Same for government. If one portion of government spending goes up, then the whole thing goes up. If one portion of investment spending goes up, then the whole thing goes up. If the amount of exports goes up, then the whole thing goes up. So let me show you on a graph what that would look like. You would take aggregate demand. You would shift it out to the right. You would give it a label. The label would be, if this is like the first AD, this would be the second one, AD1, with an arrow. Just like moving demand in unit 1. Now, things will get complicated when we add shortens aggregate supply, which goes that way. We'll do that later, okay? So there is an example of aggregate demand going up, and we'll go through the 4 categories in a minute. Let's take a look at an example of aggregate demand going down. If any portion of this formula goes up, then, goes down, if there's less consumer spending, less government spending, less investment spending, less exports, or if we have more imports hurt, they detract, aggregate demand will shift to the left. So we would shift it to the left. Left is less, right is more. We call it aggregate demand 2 with an arrow. And actually, I forgot that this one is aggregate demand 1. There you go. Woohoo. That arrow is god awful too. Please be better than me. Please be neater than me. There we go. Okay. So that's what it would look like if aggregate demand was going down. And it will get much more complicated when we add in short-run aggregate supply and long-run aggregate supply and other pieces of this graph. But today it's super duper easy. So the next part is going to be the shifters of aggregate demand. So first unit, we were looking at demand on a small scale. Individual markets, the market for eggs, the market for gasoline. So our tribe things came into place. This is easier because we learned the formula last unit and now we're just putting it on a graph. So there's no like fun, cutesy little acronym to trick your brain. I literally just need you to remember CIGX minus M. Okay? So let's talk about each one. Consumer spending, I'll give you first a definition and then some examples. Consumer spending is when everyday consumers spend money on consumer items for themselves. So like more, but it has to be large scale, right? It can't be like Miss Keller buys a car, because I'm a drop in the bucket to the consumer spending for the whole nation, for aggregate demand, for everybody's demand added together. It needs to be something that shifts lots of consumers' ability to spend. So for example, there could be like the wages of all workers increase, or the government passes a huge stimulus check that a bunch of Americans during COVID-19 get like $3,000 per kid they have, something crazy like that. So things that would impact most consumers or their wages or their ability to spend, okay? What this is not is prices going up or down. That isn't going to be really seen in our shifters of AD. Let's move on to investment spending. Remember, business investment spending is when businesses spend money on capital goods. But remember, business investment spending is also the wages and benefits of workers. So government policy can come into play there. If the government passes certain laws that help or hurt businesses, it's going to fall into business investment spending. But for the most part, business investment spending, the questions will say more things like businesses spend more money on capital goods, or I don't know. I mean, that's really, there's not great examples of that one. When we get into business investment spending, a lot of it is going to fall under the next thing we're going to learn, called short run aggregate supply. So just take this with a grain of salt. You're not going to see many business investment spending examples. Let's move on to government spending. Remember, government spending is when the government spends money on items like actual physical capital, things that they are building, items that create jobs, research that creates jobs, not things like food stamps, disability checks, unemployment checks. The government needs to be spending money on tangible items. So what is an example of the government spending a crap ton of money on tangible items? Interstates, military spending. Those are the sort of things that will increase or decrease government spending. Don't think like stimulus, food checks, unemployment. That would go here. Things like food stamps, WIC, SNAP, Medicare, Medicaid. Well, Medicare and Medicaid might fall under this. But Social Security, that was the word I was looking for. Those are checks in people's pockets. They will go spend that money. So if the government increases Social Security benefits, disability benefits, unemployment benefits, food stamp benefits, then those people are consumers and they will spend. Consumer spending will go up. Government spending is only when they spend it on like tangible items, which is what we talked about last unit anyway. And then changes in net exports. If X goes up, then aggregate demand will go up, right? Because we are making stuff and it is demanded across the world, okay? If exports go down, then aggregate demand will go down. If we make less stuff, then that whole equation, CIGX, will go down, and like American stuff is not being demanded. Now, imports is going to be the opposite. It gets funky. Look at this. This is minus imports, meaning imports are negative. So if imports increase, then aggregate demand actually goes down. Because what does that mean? People aren't demanding American goods. People are demanding foreign goods. So the aggregate demand for American goods is going to go down. If imports decrease, and that like by association, that means people are buying American goods, then aggregate demand will increase because people are demanding American goods and not foreign goods. So write down some examples of those and let's move forth. So we were going to do something fun. Gosh, dang it. NTI always happens on the days that I have fun things planned. And then we're in school on the days I have nothing fun planned. I have little flashcards that you will keep all of this unit. And honestly, the 4th unit and the 5th unit. And these little flashcards have like AD and an up arrow and a down arrow and your reason, CIGX. And you're going to have to hold up flashcards and it was going to be fun. And now we can't have any fun. It's okay. We'll use the flashcards again, hopefully when we're back in school. So instead of the flashcards, I'm going to do like 2 examples with you. And then I am going to ask you in the Google form to do the other examples. So here is what you will be doing essentially. I'm going to read this, or you're going to read this. And then you would have held up a card. But now you're just going to answer. Does AD go up or down due to what reason? CIGX. So you have to ask yourself, are American goods being demanded? If so, AD goes up. If not, AD goes down. And then I need you to give me a category. So I'm going to do the first 2 for you. And then I'm going to have you do 3 through 10 kind of in the multiple choice below. So the stock market is on the rise this year. Oh, I did a trickster to begin with. So you see that word stock market and you're like, doesn't count in GDP, right? Because the things that don't count in GDP then don't count in aggregate demand because aggregate demand is made of GDP, which is made of CIGX. But think about it. If the stock market is on the rise this year and people are like making money, what are they going to do with that money? They're going to go spend that money. So aggregate demand is going up because people are making more money. If people make more money, they're going to spend more money. So don't think like investment spending. You see the word stock and you're like, oh, investment. In AP Macro, investment means businesses buying capital goods. Okay? This is actually consumer spending. Consumer spending has increased because people made money in the stock market and they're going to go like spend that money. Okay. All right. Number 2 is so simple. The government decreases its spending. Wow. It couldn't be even more simple. So that whole equation, CIGX, the government part went down, meaning aggregate demand. American goods are not being demanded. The government is not demanding that more military goods or interstates or fire trucks be built. And so aggregate demand goes down. Okay. I'm going to do number 3 with you because there's actually a typo. I apologize. That is supposed to say expect. Wow, Miss Keller. Expect. People expect the economy to improve. So some of the questions you're going to see with aggregate demand with anything has to do with inflationary expectations or like economic expectations. If you think the economy is going to improve, then you're going to be a little bit less tight with your budget. If you're a little bit less tight with your budget, that means you are consuming more. You might even be a business owner who is gonna loosen up on your business budget a little bit and invest in more capital goods, in which case aggregate demand would go up. Okay, let me make sure I have no more typos. I want to see what you guys think about the rest of them, so I'm going to put them in 4 through 10, number 4 through 10. I'm going to put in the Google form, and you will have to answer, and I'll make it multiple choice, y'all. It's going to be the easiest thing you've ever seen. Now, the last thing I'm going to have you do, oh, dang it, we're going to do something else fun too, where you guys got to go around the room with your friends and answer questions. We just can't win. I'm going to have you guys answer some multiple choice questions below. So I'm going to make this multiple choice question MC number 1. So in the Google form, answer that question for me. And there are no other multiple choice questions. So what am I doing? You get to answer one multiple choice question. Lucky you. That is all for today.